Kasper, how are we doing?
How's it going, Jess?
Good,
Pleasure to
good.
be
Thank
here.
you.
Mhm.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you for making the time to jump on. Where are you dialing in from?
Yeah, so I'm dialing in from my isolation office in Bangkok.
Speaking of isolation, how are you finding it over there in Bangkok?
So Thailand is a bit different from other countries, I believe. We There is an alcohol ban that was actually lifted just yesterday, and the whole population just went completely crazy. And believe it or not, we had the supermarkets. They were actually given fines for not imposing social distancing on the
Yeah.
alcohol craving customers who literally attacked the shops like if it was Black Friday. So that was pretty crazy.
What was the science behind? What science did they claim there was behind banning the alcohol? Was it to do with the fact that it would reduce the number of gatherings because when people have alcohol, they're gathering? What was the?
I guess so, but I would like to know the answer to that question as well.
But I guess they're justified, right? As soon as they opened it back up again, everyone's just broken the social distancing
Yes.
to get back on it. Right.
I
Apart
don't
from
really,
that,
I don't, yeah, I don't really agree on that particular measurement, but like there are obvious, like, so Thailand is just like 30% of the gross domestic product is tourism, which is just eradicated right now. So a lot of businesses are struggling in the travel sector and in the tourism sector.
as I can imagine, I mean, tourism across the globe has pretty much taken a hit. Tourism and retail. Are there many like business incentives there for? Because I know here in the UK, there's various different incentives for businesses. They're given grants. You have a capacity to furlough your employees, which basically means if you keep your employees on your payroll, the government will pay them to stay at home and not work, which is just a great way to prevent immediate unemployment, because obviously to get those
Yeah.
people back into jobs once things open up is far more difficult than just keeping them in employment as it is, stuck to their employers. Is there anything in Thailand that's helping along those lines?
Like there are a few incentives, but they are more geared towards individuals as opposed to businesses. And all individuals, like for example, because individuals they need to stay at home,
Mhm.
the government are helping them to pay for the electricity bill, for example, which is quite high because you have all the cost for air conditioning running 24/7, and then
So when they say helping, are they paying the whole electricity bill, or is it a subsidy? Or
it's a subset of the bill. Yeah, I got 3% on my bill this month.
okay, fine. So it's not
is,
massive.
no. And
So your usage would have went up by like 25%, but they're paying 3% subsidy.
yeah, the usage went up like 100%,
Oh
and they
wow.
paid 3%. So another perk that the government is giving out is that everyone who qualify to like a few different qualifications, they can get like, let me just pull off my calculator. They can get 5,000 Thai baht a month, which equivalent to 150 US dollars.
Okay, fair enough.
And yeah, and it's like one of the things, you need to be out of a job, and it is around half the minimum wage of Thailand, which is in any regards pretty low
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the world. But the economy is also different. But the funny thing is that so many people applied for this, and then the government they issued a statement that they would be running very, very harsh legal measures towards anyone who were applying for this for these 5,000 Thai baht with fraudulent intentions.
Yeah.
And when they issued that statement, 600,000 people they withdrew their application.
That's exactly, absolutely, and it's quite sad to see that so many people are taking advantage of these schemes. I mean, I know here that the same thing happened, and hearing from the USA, I know that Harvard and Stanford applied for the application for some of the funding that was available when they're some of the biggest trusts in the globe with massive cash in the bank and reserve, and they were still applying for these schemes because it's just it wasn't very ethical, is it? But fine. So take me to your mindset of where you were at from a business perspective when you started hearing about this coronavirus, and when did it start getting serious for you, and how has your thinking kind of evolved over this period of time?
Let me just give you a little background on like my business as a whole. It's like I'm the CEO of Candio, and which is a HR tech startup, and we help companies employ better tech people. We do that by acting as a marketplace and publisher for assessment tests from literally the best people across the globe within any technical verticals. So if a brilliant voice within, for example, SEO, search engine optimization, he can establish another revenue stream for himself by publishing an assessment test and making his knowledge available to companies across the globe, and publishing assessment with Candio, where he will get a fixed percentage of the revenue that we will generate from his assessment test. Mm-hmm. So as such, it's obviously the whole like hiring and HR space has been taking a massive hit, and companies are just like they're not hiring to the same extent that they were before. So when I heard about it, I said to myself, oh please, like I hope this will not impact us. But even though we are very focused on remote hiring and companies hiring across continents, for example the US trying to find developers in India, etc. But this has taken a hit as well.
Absolutely. And how have you found that? So if you were to take a normal given month of hiring, what percentage would you say hiring has fallen to? Because I know from our perspective, we've got a bunch of open positions which we've been actively recruiting for. And even when we found suitable candidates, we've just been hesitant to kind of move that forward, because it would be almost a bit naive of us to start making mass recruits and committing to more payroll without knowing what the future holds, without knowing when a thing's going to start to open up. There's no clear direction, right? Everything is a bit up in the air. So where would how would you say that looks currently? If a normal month was 100%, this is number of hires, where are we at in terms of a percentage of the normal?
Like we have fallen at least 50% compared to what we did the same month 3 months ago, and like what I see is that people, they are transitioning into more into other solutions that doesn't have the same amount of risk on their end, which could, for example, be a freelancing option or an agency, even though the upfront cost is more expensive to some extent. But I also see the people that are being laid off, they are trying to put their skills to use on an hourly basis or on a freelance basis, which increase the competition for the already established freelancers on Upwork, Fiverr, whatever all these freelancing platforms might be called. And obviously it's good for the consumer because he will be able to get whatever he needs at a cheaper rate.
Could Candio not be used to assess freelancers as well?
It could easily. It could. We do have customers that use it for such purpose and just like use it to screen for a single project as opposed to a fixed hire. Yep. But it is not how we positioned ourselves from the get-go. So it is obviously a message that we're trying to get out, that hey, you can use Candio for this purpose as well. Yeah. And it's literally a 360-degree tech screening solution, regardless if you want to use it on a freelancer, on an agency, on an individual, or even on yourself if you want to further your skills.
Absolutely. And I know we spoke about this briefly when we last spoke. In terms of freelancing, it can be a bit of a tricky landscape, to say the least, when you're trying to navigate it as a software founder, as a tech founder, or any founder that's looking to outsource elements of their business, what would you say from your experience? I'll touch on this as well from my experience. What would you say from your experience specifically is one of the biggest challenges most founders find when they start with their first bit of outsourcing?
That is cultural differences. They don't understand how the receiving end works when they are trying to engage in outsourcing. And a good example of this was actually my very first company, which I don't speak of a lot because it was a terrible, miserable event on my end. And I guess I was like 21 years old, and I wanted to make I didn't have any experience in tech. I didn't have any experience in outsourcing, project management, app development. So I decided to make a platform that focused on all these four elements. And I went down to the bank and I took a loan in my apartment that I had at that time. And in the span of 6 months, I believe that I burned it all up and ended up with a non-functioning product without any go-to-market strategy. Could I have done it differently? Yes, I most definitely could. But I also learned a lot from the experience. And I was in Denmark at that time, which is my home country. And I outsourced this project to India. And at that time, I actually blamed the agency that took on the assignment.
Yep.
But going forward, I have learned that this was simply due to my own incompetence at that time that this project didn't succeed, because the tools that I gave the agency to successfully complete the task was too broad, too vague. The specifications that they received were just non-existent.
No, absolutely. And I know this from personal experience, obviously, given my culture and upbringing. You know, there is in these Middle Eastern and Asian countries, there is an element of needing to provide very specific guidance. And
what experience do you have with outsourcing?
Yeah, so my experience, I mean, no different to any entrepreneur out there. We've played around with many different countries and different freelancers, and my experience with outsourcing is a fewfold. One is exactly your point there. I struggle, and maybe this is my lack of incompetence at sourcing the right people. I struggle to find certain levels of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I can easily find somebody who can, if I say do ABC, they will do ABC, but they could not extrapolate to do DEF if there's a natural progression towards it. And almost, you know, if you know what you're going in for and you've weighed up the cost benefit analysis and you're willing to provide either your time or one of your managers' time to project manage that, then for me, I could make certain projects economical. But there are other areas of my business which I would never, or maybe again due to my incompetence, I would not trust outsourcing that part of the business. So if you imagine our tech team, we have certain elements of the tech team which are outsourced to different areas, but my core tech team is here in the UK, and I have to have it that way because those people who I need to communicate with on the bigger vision, the strategy, I feel like that would be a bit far more challenging trying to do that in an outsourced manner.
So let me tell you about the Candio. We are a 100% distributed team, and I have personally both fallen in love and really specialized myself in outsourcing to and with the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
For several reasons. And first of all, they speak extraordinary English. They learn it from a very young age, and and my tech team, they can participate flawlessly in meetings that we have with, for example, clients in the UK, the US, and it's no offense to any religion, but it's a Christian country, and they tend to be very practicing their faith to a pretty big extent, which I have found to I found a direct correlation to the to the amount of faith that the people they have
Interesting.
onto how loyal and reliable they are in their work and the effort that they put into the business.
You mentioned, interesting, you mentioned loyalty. So in terms of some of the experience we've had as a team, I know that there's been various instances from my managers who are outsourcing, or whether it's myself outsourcing. I've had this experience as well, where you find a great team member, they've joined the team, they're doing 3 to 4 months of great work, and you're really looking towards the future now and getting them as a staple part of your team. As soon as they find a new freelance project, which is offering them a slight bit more money, everything is financially driven. And there's very little, from my experience, investment into the long-term career objectives. Or, oh, if I stay at this company within a year, I can get this promotion. That's not, from my experience, in their level of thinking. They're thinking more, oh, he's offering me this much today. This new company's offering me 2% more. I'm switching.
Yeah.
And for me, that becomes a bit more harder to sustain in terms of the long run. Is that something you found?
It's an interesting topic, and I have a very specific approach to exactly this that I use all the time when I'm hiring. So to give you a little bit of context, we have laid off a few people with the coronavirus. We used to be 8 people. Now we are 6, and I have never met any of my colleagues that I have distributed, and the one that I had the longest, he has been with me for 8 years full time.
It's impressive.
And it's when I tell this to people, it's like it has been most of his last decade working for me, and I have seen him.
Do you mind me asking, is that in an employed capacity, or has he got equity in the business?
It's an employed capacity.
That's very impressive. 8 years.
Yeah, so he I have watched him grow, and he have watched my businesses grow, and I have increased him in salaries over the year, as you would do normally with any employee. And we have had employee development talks, which direction he wanted to go, which direction I could see the company taking him. And besides being very talented, he's also a really nice guy. And I hope he will never leave me, because I would be completely screwed without him.
If you're listening, don't leave.
Yes, exactly. Don't leave. But whenever I'm hiring a new person, obviously we use Candio to screen our tech team in-house. But I always ask them what they want to make, and when they say that the number that they want to make and whatever they have in mind, some people they aim high, some people they aim modest. But I always top up the number with an additional amount if I want to hire them. So I say, oh, you ask for $2,000 a month, I'll give you $2,500. You ask for $1,000 a month, I will give you $1,200. Like whatever I feel is appropriate for that particular time. And on top of that, I have researched the Filipino culture to such a large extent that I know exactly what they would expect in terms of social security plan, pension, fitness coverage, and even insurance. So they have a range of different initiatives that they would never be able to get any of these perks in any other job that they can find online, because the other employer would simply not have taken the time to familiarize himself with this knowledge. And this is essentially also what has built my team, because almost all from my team are now made from referrals that the internal team has made, asking me, I have this friend.
That's powerful.
He would be a great addition to the team because of these reasons. And could you consider him?
So
go ahead.
when let's say you're hiring for a new position, it's a new junior developer, and for argument's sake, you value that developer at $3,000 a month. So you have a budget in your mind for a junior developer for $3,000 a month. Let's for argument's sake, we look after our people here at Growhawk. So, so let's say in your mind you can budget in your cash flow $3,000. Now you start interviewing, and a candidate says that they want $3,500. So are you saying that you would never negotiate someone down to your price point? You rather find someone who's expecting less and give them more? Is that what you're trying to say in that point?
No, not necessarily. But I think that when you are anyway working with countries in, for example, Southeast Asia, it shouldn't be about the last $100 in your salary budget,
right?
Because it won't mean a lot to you, but it will mean a damn lot to him.
Got it.
So
you're playing around with a small percentage, but you're always upticking it to make sure that price in their head isn't an issue. They get it. They don't feel like they've been negotiated to the fine line. They've got some movement. They're comfortable.
Yes, and on top of that, they will. I explain to them that you are getting an above market package. You're getting an unusually good amount of perks that you will have very little possibility finding anywhere else. And on my end, it's still significantly cheaper than any other alternative that I can find, both on freelancing platforms or on in other countries. Even in Thailand, for example, the wages in Thailand are double, sometimes triple of what they are in the Philippines. And in exchange, I ask that he is loyal and that he answers quickly, and he doesn't disappear, and he asks for help, and he performs well from the best of his abilities. And I also explained to him, and all my employees, they saw this firsthand, that if someone comes in and he doesn't return the favor of a good package, then he'll be fired, and he'll be fired quickly, and it'll be in a matter of weeks or months. Then, like whenever we feel that this is not a good colleague, he'll be let go.
Okay, so in terms of trying to prevent them from leaving or disappearing, because I know that's an issue in the
it's a big issue.
Because we don't think about that here in the Western world, right? You hire somebody, they turn up for an interview, you give them their induction. Very rarely do they just leave, within a couple of weeks. And in fact, we've definitely had the situation where we've had an outsourced role, a full-time employee on an outsourced role. I won't name which country it was in, where the person simply did not turn up to work. Like, just one day he decided, I'm just not turning up to work, and stopped responding to messages. Like, what things have you? And that would never happen. That was a complete, messes up with your mind here, because you would not expect that. You expect the courtesy of a phone call or an email or some sort of discussion, so you can resolve the issue and find out what it was that was affecting them. Help me understand, what is the cultural nuances there, and what can you do to prevent that? Does it come back down to setting up the environment, like you said, with the pay and incentives, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, so it's not that I have a magic wand that works for outsourcing in 100% of scenarios, but what I have done over the past decade is developing a method that sets me up for success in my hiring process, and minimizes the possibilities that someone does that to me, or if he does, then that'll be it, and I won't spend more time on it. But hopefully we will catch that in the initial phase. But it is a very real thing that people simply just disappear, and it's something that we deal with. We deal with it. Like the last hire that I had, she was suddenly gone for 2 weeks, and suddenly she resurfaced and was like, "Hey, I'm here for work. What should I do?" I'm like, "No, you're fine. You doesn't have a job."
Yeah.
And it's a good question what you can do to avoid it. But I think you really need to set up good processes that you are in touch with all your staff every day. And one of the biggest mistakes, as well as slash issues that I see, is that people they are doing the opposite of what I'm doing. They go and they outsource for the sake of saving money, which is obviously the very first reason why you would outsource in the first place. And then on top of that, they find one. Believe it or not, like in the Philippines, you can find full-time employees all the way down to 200 USD a month for 160 hours. This is usually like freshly graduated people that comes right out of college, who are just hungry for work experience. So you have them on your payroll for a little over $1 an hour, and on top of that, people would try to squeeze them even more and be like, are you sure you cannot do one, like 150 is above my budget, can you do $1 an hour?
Yes.
And so squeezing them to an extent that is borderline immoral will almost with a 100% certainty ensure that they will disappear on you at some point. That is the first thing. Like secondly, I see very often that when people they outsource to other companies, they are treating the outsourced employee as an agency, being here is the task. Please come back with the task solved successfully.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we are not being in touch at all.
Yes.
You just figure that out. And I think it really clicked for me when I finally understood that you need to treat them as normal employees. It's like ask how their weekend was, ask what they had for dinner last night, and how is their kids, etc. Like, they need interaction. They're sitting at home working from their computer, not having a whole lot of interaction. So, and they are caring for the business.
Perfect. And that brings us on to a topic I wanted to pick up with you. And that is obviously globally, most companies now have moved their offices to some form of remote working. And obviously with you working remotely for a long time now, what would you say are your top tips for creating or maintaining a good working culture remotely? Because I know, if you're used to a standard office where you've got a canteen, people are socializing, there's a table tennis table, there's water cooler moments where people are brainstorming and sharing good ideas. How do you do that in your remote world?
Yeah, we have a weekly meeting that I religiously are having with my employees, trying to talk to all of them. What did you do last week? What are you doing this week? And what challenges are we facing? And I would even go to the extent and encourage people to do this every day. It depends on the business, like what makes sense for the individual business. But the more you can be in touch with your remote worker, the better the performance you will see.
And what's the format you use for these meetings, Kasper? What platform are you using for those that are new to remote working? What software are you using? How long are the meetings? How do you set it up?
We use Slack. We use Slack for chat, and we use Skype for calls. Skype is Danish invented, so.
And guys, there are plenty. For those of you who are new to this, there are plenty of solutions you could be using, whether it's Zoom, whether it's GoToMeeting. There's plenty of remote meeting platforms you can be using.
Yeah, but you need to find your own sense of leadership towards both the team and as well as the individual, and then you need to accept that your style of leadership needs to be different as opposed to what it would be in your home country. People, they are not as forward thinking as you could expect in your home country, and as such you really need to be on top of their game. They will be on top of your game. You just need to explain them what the game is, and they will be on top of it.
Okay, awesome. And so you, apart from the weekly chats, do you do any social activity with your remote team members? Do you do any quizzes or games? I've heard of so many different ideas. What do you find works effectively in terms of, getting to know those team members beyond just work, helping them to build those relationships?
So almost all from my team, they met each other in real life. I set that up. I invited them to because like some of them they live in the same area, so they have the ability to meet as opposed to I would have to take a plane to meet them. And we haven't done it for the past couple of months, but we I have invited them on the company expense to the cinema, to restaurants, to the bars, out having beers together. We are very generous with giving bonuses for good performance. We I sponsor their. I mentioned this previously. I sponsor their fitness subscription, their Netflix account, Spotify account, nice. personal health insurance. I pay for their own private internet connection. So like they get a lot of things financed from the company.
So you pay for the full internet connection for each of your remote team members?
Yes.
Okay.
They send me the bill every month, and it is reimbursed over their salary.
Okay. So coming back to the point on freelancers, if you don't mind. So from some of our experiences, we were finding that the freelancing environment in many countries, which you'd think to outsource in, is really starting to take over the employment potential. So what I mean by that is you can find many excellent candidates, and the ones who are mainly talented tend to want to stay and remain as freelancers, and they're very much against taking an employed position and building a career. Is that something you found, that the freelance environment is preventing people from pursuing careers within employed positions?
First of all, I definitely see the world as a whole going in that direction. Freelancing is just like month to month gaining traction, gaining good talent that can solve complex tasks for a very reasonable amount of money, where they don't like, and it goes both ways. The freelancer doesn't have to take on the responsibility on a fixed employment, and as well as the company doesn't have to take on the risk of employing someone full-time with severance pay and send like onboarding a person to the team with all that effort that comes associated with that. So I definitely see it going in that direction, and I also hope it will go in that direction, because it will radically make bigger demands to especially the freelancer on his self-discipline in terms of what he needs to deliver over what amount of time to a certain clients to be rehired.
So Kasper, I struggle with that a little bit. And the reason for that is, let's take a graphic designer as an example. If you're hiring a graphic designer, you find an amazing graphic designer on a freelancing platform, and you give them a project, they do an okay job. And the reason they're going to do an okay job, even though they're a fantastic graphic designer, is they don't understand your brand and your vision of how you're articulating a project just yet. So you find that the taste and their understanding of your requirements matures with time. The best graphic designer I have has been working with me for 5-6 years. And finally, they understand your intuitive want. You can send a couple of bullet points on an email and they mock it up perfectly how you want it, and it's good to go. Right? So that's not to do with the level of ability or qualification. It's the time spent in that role. And the same can be said for sales roles, for development roles, junior developers, senior developers. It takes time for them to understand the requirements. So part of the challenge of having too much of a freelance community, I find, from a founder's point of view, is yes, they come with convenience for small projects, right? If I have a small project, great, fire it across to a freelancer, they'll get it done 80% to how you want it to be done, and then you can refine it and you're good to go. But in terms of a long-term hiring a freelancer, on a retained basis, what's to stop them from disappearing after month 4? And then you've invested the first 3 months trying to get them to understand your vision and the way you want the design to be done. It just becomes very prohibitive, and you start questioning, was there any economic benefit in the first place? Or was I better off just employing someone from the get-go, investing 6 months while they learn the process, and then you've got a graphic designer who understands what you want? What's your view on that?
I think it's like us as a founder, we that is our finest job to really gouge every project that we have internally, because we would probably have a feel if this is something that requires a long-term involvement, or if this is something that can be solved on a short-term basis. But it's a good example, because, for example, when we are hiring new developers, it will be extremely difficult for an outside freelancer to jump into our code and just fix something without knowing what he's messing up. Like it requires an extensive amount of very unique knowledge that, regardless how good of a coder you are, you won't know how our platform is set up, and you need time to familiarize yourself with that.
So it'd be good to get your thoughts on this. One of the ideas I kind of was thinking around was, if the challenge is keeping a freelancer for a long period of time, or an outsourced employee to keep them engaged, would a solution be, and I've not tried this, I've not tested it, it'd be something to test, would the solution be to ramp their earnings based on time spent within the company? I know some companies have done this, some people who are hiring have done this, where if you stay within 3 months, stay for 3 months, your pay is going to increase by this percentage. If you stay 6 months plus, your pay is going to increase to this percentage. 1 year plus, we're going to bump you up by this percentage. From your experience, have you found that's worked? Is that something you've tried or heard somebody try?
Yeah, I tried it several times, and I actually, it is actually not something I have found working very well. And like, I have found that the candidates that I've been working with, they were way more interested in working with my style of vision and leadership, as well as the benefits package that we built around Candio. And then they all my staff, they know by heart that if they perform well, their salary will increase. And that is something that you obviously only can build over time, when they start to see their colleagues getting bumped up in salaries because they are performing well. And I would encourage all founders out there to try to give your virtual employee a salary bump. It works like magic. If you have never done it, just throw an extra $100 on the payslip. It's
one of the concerns founders may have around that, which is probably preventing them from doing that, is this notion that if you just willy-nilly increase their salary from day one, you may be creating a precedent. You may be creating a mindset or a culture that, look, this guy's just going to throw money at us. Look at that. He don't even know me. I've just started the job and he's already paying me above market salary. So I guess that's some of the things that could be going through a founder's mind. But it sounds like, from your experience, what you're saying is they actually appreciate it, and it gives them that breathing room to express themselves and to commit themselves to you, knowing that you didn't haggle them to the very last penny where you was, bordering being unethical with how much you're paying them.
I'm definitely not saying that that everyone understands this belief, but the ones who doesn't understand this belief are the wrong employees for my organization.
Yep.
And they will not survive for long. As opposed to the ones that appreciate it and delivers upon it, they will be with me for years, hopefully decades. Yeah.
Just to flip the conversation a little bit. So let's say we've got a founder who is in the very early stages. He's got a great idea. Maybe he's a tech founder. He started coding it. He's got a beta up, and now he's really looking to make his first recruits. So he's looking for, let's say, his first hire in a marketing position. He's a tech founder. He wants a chief marketing officer. What would your advice be to him in terms of which countries to look for, and how to start that process of finding a suitable candidate? And again, is that a role that you would, I know your whole team is distributed. Is that a role which you would say is better off having in-house, or is it perfectly possible to have a very good chief marketing officer or that type of role remotely? Because I know that some people have a preconceived notion that certain roles cannot be outsourced, whether it's sales or marketing, you must have them in-house. What's your view on that?
So just to follow that up, I never succeeded in outsourcing graphics well. Graphics is something that every time I tried, it was just hideous.
It's very difficult.
Like it really didn't correspond with it might be my personal preference as well as also what I believe that our customers they want.
Yeah.
So graphics is something that, while I didn't really have it in-house, I always took it from, as you did, from my main guy in the Nordics who really knows the stroke that I'm looking for, and he delivers every time.
One of the tips for you there, Kasper, because I actually struggled with this exact same thing. I've obviously got this very talented graphic designer, and I wanted to build that team for outsourcing, and I burned through so many graphic designers. I couldn't tell you, and it's a really frustrating field because, I'm not an artist, but I have that intuition, like you said, of what our clients, what our target audience wants to be looking at, whether it's UX, UI, or a blog piece of content, etc. What I started doing was I know you would have your brand guidelines set up and your brand Bible to an extent where all the assets are all in a folder and contained. So once you pass that on to the a junior outsourced designer, what I found helped, and it takes a bit of investment time, so you need someone that's going to stick around, is taking the content from your experienced designer, your senior designer, and sharing that with them. So they're both doing the same task for an overlap period. And this is where it's counterintuitive because you're paying both of them to do the same thing. But very quickly, the junior will start to understand, the same requirement, this is what I did, and this is what that guy did. That's what he likes. You see what I mean? And they almost they start imitating. I've got some success with that. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's definitely this junior designers now are at a level where I can give them some bits to do, and we're moving along. Like there's still certain bits where it's a big thing where I'm just going to give it straight to my senior guy, but at least now I've got some excess capacity where if there's smaller things like a small image on the website or change this for social media, like these guys can get it done now because they've spent time with the senior guy, understanding almost without words, just understanding it through seeing how he delivered the project, how they should then deliver the project. So do give that a try and see if that works for you. But there's no guarantees there because graphic design is a minefield.
I'll haunt your dreams if it doesn't work. So like what we did was that we I spent a lot of money on template solutions and like template platforms where we could find suitable templates. So really trying to relieve the graphic designer of as much work as possible and simply say, use this template, it'll work.
I think it's funny that this comes up. I think graphic design is is too often overlooked within a SaaS company. It's a very important factor. If you look at everything we do, from UI UX to the way we're engaging through ebooks or brochure downloads, our website, social media, it's the image of your company and the brand of it is super important. And so sometimes, kind of to save a couple of £100, you go for a weaker graphic designer. It's probably not worth it in the long run. It's better to invest up front in that team and get the graphics you're looking for off the bat. I mean, and again, you're looking to save money, but then if you're sending one graphic back for 5 iterations with an outsourced employee versus getting it in one go within 10 minutes from your senior, maybe it's a false economy. So you have to crunch the numbers for yourself for each individual project.
But to get back to the question that you asked before with a marketing guy, like a head of marketing, if this is something that you would outsource, and I would say that I got very, very lucky, and I think this was pure luck, because I found one guy, which is my head of marketing right now, and he has been with me for almost 3 years, and he has the qualities that I'm looking for, and besides that, he has a sense of strategy as well.
Where is he based, if you don't mind me asking?
He's Philippine. He's from the Philippines. My whole team is from the Philippines.
So you're on your own in Bangkok?
I'm with our investor, our investor here in Bangkok, and we collaborate on the more holistic scope of the company, as well as managing the team who are in the Philippines. So, like, I believe that you can definitely outsource marketing, but the strategy around marketing, I wouldn't outsource. Like, I would set up a framework. If you cannot do that yourself, do that with someone who is capable about setting that framework up, and then hire someone to fill that framework. That can work very well and be a very cost-effective solution.
So coming back to the scenario, you've got a tech founder who set up his beta platform. He hasn't got a clue about marketing strategy. So your advice to him would be?
Don't outsource the strategy before you at least try to get a few opinions on it from someone within your own culture. Like, that would be my very, very first advice. Don't.
So would you say he tried to hire somebody in his locality?
Yeah, I would definitely. Or maybe you have a friend you can just ask for advice, or maybe hire someone, or take a few hours with a local agency to set up some strategy. But I know this is also difficult to do for a single founder who is a tech founder. Maybe he doesn't know a lot about marketing, and the budget is not unlimited. And as such, there is probably some extent of self-learning, but I wouldn't trust third world countries in either Africa or Southeast Asia with marketing budgets, because it's really, when they start to press the speeder, the money disappears fast, and if they disappear fast in the wrong direction, then it can be like so destroying to the company.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there, Kasper. And just to emphasize that more for any founders, if you're a tech founder, and I'm not a tech founder, so this comes naturally to me, but if you're a tech founder, it is imperative that you spend time learning, whether that's from friends, from mentors, from people you can get in touch with and network with, how to market and sell your product. Yeah, we find that, I don't know what your view on this, Kasper, is, but we find a lot of tech founders who try to avoid that and outsource it or hire somebody. It doesn't happen. You need to be able to at least close 5 to 10 deals on your own before trying to build a team that can do that, because the team will only do what you direct them to do.
It's a very good point you're making there. If you can't do it yourself, how would you ever teach someone to do it? And it's essentially what you are hiring for when you're outsourcing is you really need to set the direction.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, as a founder, and this is my mentor taught me this, as a founder, you will naturally have more of an ability to sell than a salesperson you hire. And the reason for that is that product is your baby. You have a natural charisma for the product. You have a natural affinity to the product. You built it to address a certain need. So if you're struggling to sell it, it's going to be very difficult for you to take somebody who you've hired to train them up and to sell it when you don't have the blueprint yourself. So it's super important, even if you're a tech founder, roll up your sleeves, just how you taught yourself how to code, teach yourself, immerse yourself in sales, understanding, not forever, but just to do a few sales so that when you make your first sales hire or your sales SVP or any other junior salesperson, you know exactly what that process is. You know what the pain points of your customers are. You know what the perfect target audience is, and you know how to address those through your platform. So yeah, I think that is definitely an often overlooked point.
And so many companies are including Candy. We have been struggling a lot with finding our optimal product market fit for a long time. And if you cannot even take the basic steps towards your target audience and refining that, then it will be very difficult for some Indian guy that has no loyalty to your business to do the same.
I completely agree. And Kasper, for those listening, Kasper, how would you define when your company has met or reached product market fit? What would you say was the milestone for you to say, okay, this is it, we're getting some traction here, we've got to product market fit?
You can feel it. It's like you have no doubt when you have reached it, and it's like my mentor, he taught me a lot about this, and some of the models that we went through to get both get closer and to obtain was both extremely challenging and also really challenged my beliefs on many levels, both in terms of what is the market actually for this product. Do I even know it myself? Besides that I love the product, do I know who are the optimal group of customers for this product? And it is just paramount to really know that. So
completely agree.
We have and we used to work with the total market and inside the total market, what is your target? Are you targeting this little dot, or are you targeting a little bit broader, or are you targeting way beyond your market? And obviously they should overlap too.
Absolutely. And guys, just as a kind of, there's no exact answer to this, but just as some sort of a measuring stick to give you an aid of if you're moving in the right direction, a litmus test for any founder out there who's looking to see, are we starting to get product market fit, is you need to be able to sign up 10 to 20 customers from scratch who are paying and who you have no affinity to. They're not your brothers, they're not your cousins, they're not your friends or your co-founders, in-laws, new people who you've reached, who you've demoed the product to, and they're a paying happy customer. When they're a paying happy customer who are not churning, who are continuing to renew their subscription, and you've done that 10 to 20 times, that's a good litmus test that you've got something here that is working. And that's when you want to come on to Kasper's advice, which is focus on that target market, right? What is your total addressable market? And then more specifically within that TAM, what is the area where you're getting the best bang for your buck? Because from the 20 deals you've closed, a subset of those 20 would have closed a little bit easier, and you'll feel it. Maybe a certain type of business, whether it's retail or whether it's e-commerce, that type of deal just closes easier for your product. That is going to be your go-to market to focus your limited resource on in the early days. Anything you want to add?
And as opposed to the opposite, with, which is people that are not your product market fit. And many founders, then including myself, spend and have spent a lot of time listening to advice from audience that was not optimal product market fit, which essentially will take your product in a very bad direction, and you will end up developing features that nobody wants, and that are completely redundant for the product because they doesn't add value to the market. And just like don't fall into this trap, because it will be both time consuming and expensive.
Completely agree. Like, so many founders focus on this iterate loop, which is very important, but you need to understand
if the feedback is shit.
Exactly. Whose feedback are you taking? Are you taking the feedback of the anomaly subscriber who isn't in the field, and therefore you start developing a new feature for 1% of your total subscriber base? Is that a great use of your time? Or is it better to focus on a different feature where 80% of your existing subscriber base is going to benefit from that? So definitely a very important point there, Kasper. So Kasper, before we head off, for founders out there who are looking to set up their first outsource office or first team member, what is your takeaway tip for them? Would you say they start small? Would you say they go gung-ho and buy an office space and pack it with 20 people and off we go? What's your advice? How do they dip their feet in? How do they get started?
So I would definitely try to, which is what I did. I went to some of the outsourcing platforms that was like not the biggest ones in the world, that had more local talent, where you could also find a little guy who lived in a cottage hut in the countryside of his country in Southeast Asia. I find that many of the big platforms, they are both very competitive from the candidate side. The candidates are overpricing themselves because they have the idea that, oh, the world is getting smaller with the internet, and I can price myself as they do in the United States, for example. And
do they quote you in dollars?
Oh, many times they quote in dollars. But
I find that so confusing. Like, I'll be speaking to somebody in a different country. Their country is not dollar based. I'm pound based. Why are you quoting me in dollars? We have to do this two-way conversion.
And then and also from the people who are looking for talent, many of the big platforms will just be completely harvested for good talent. Like, it's very difficult to find because the competition for finding the good talent is just so big there. But there are you just need to go to Google page 2 and 3. You just don't pick page 1. And if you go to these pages, you will find very big platforms with tens of thousands of candidates who are ready to work and sign up already today. And spend just, if you spend 1 hour familiarizing yourself with the culture that you are applying to or trying to get candidates from. What are the local holidays? What kind of bonus structure would they expect if they got out and got a real job in their environment? And then tell them that you spent some time familiarizing yourself with these matters. They would extremely appreciate that, and it would be so much more likely for you to both sign them up and keep them for a long time, and for them to recommend their friends.
Great advice. And in terms of some of the nitty-gritty, how many interviews would you recommend people conduct? Do you provide test projects to these outsourced employees to kind of get an idea of their competency? What's your advice around that?
Yeah, so Candio is obviously a little bit different because we are an assessment company ourselves. So we don't give test projects as per se, but we give one of our own assessment tests for candidates, so they can both get a feel for the product, as well as so we can see, is this a good candidate or not. then we usually have a few interviews with them, and I rarely decide about any job unless I have 3 qualified candidates that I have a good feeling about all 3. However many interviews that will take with however many candidates. So that can sometimes be 3, and it can sometimes be 30. And hiring is just time consuming, and it is finding needle in haystacks. But you always need to remember, like, for every hour you put into prep and hiring, it will save you tens of thousands of dollars on the other side.
Absolutely, Kasper. So thank you very much. I think that's been some great tips there for those looking to start their journey into outsourcing. I mean, clearly it's been fruitful for you, and you seem to have a lot of passion around that. Once you increase your level of competency and understanding around the culture and the various dynamics, it's definitely something which you can make economically viable. Now, in terms of things opening up now for you, what do you feel like? Because I'm interested to get another founder's view on this. Where do you see the next kind of 3 to 4 weeks? Do you think things are going to start to open up? How are you expecting business to look? Are you expecting, because we've done various models on our side, and even in the office, we've got so many different varying opinions of what level of business is going to bounce back. What's your view on it? Where do you think things are going?
Yeah, so on the goods, like on the bright side, there are a record amount of people who are looking for a job right now. So at some point, hiring will have to pick up, because if like you have millions of people in almost all countries who are currently out of a job right now, it's a bit tricky for them to apply for a job. But I'm not sure if it will be in 1 month, in 3 months, or in 6 months. But I definitely see that we will see a reverse influx of people, like suddenly being able to hire a lot of people either at a reduced price. People, they might even compromise their working salary and simply working at a lower wage because they want to compete with companies and convince them to employ them.
I know. There are many companies which are faring quite well during this lockdown. I know Twilio, for example, a massive company in the transactional email and SMS space. They're growing rapidly during this lockdown, and I've got a friend who works there, and they've invested a lot in their outsource teams, interestingly enough. So I think you're definitely going to see a shift of hiring, whether it's going to be hiring in local countries or the cheaper alternative of outsourcing or freelancing. That's yet to be seen. But my view on it initially was that, given the lockdown being such a, an artificially caused recession, in the sense that there's no underlying weakness in these companies. These are healthy companies which have been forced to close down and therefore revenues fallen. I was hopeful that things would bounce back quite dramatically with the pent-up demand. Having said that, this lockdown's gone on for quite a while now, and I the scary thing now is looking like, is this going to take a long time to phase out? I know here in the UK, in Ireland, they've got a 5-phased approach, which takes them to the end of the year before things start to look close to normal. These are the things which we're kind of having to model for, that if we have a sustained period of suppressed revenue, how do we navigate our way through and minimize our costs as business founders to get through to the other end? It's going to be a challenging time. I know, obviously, you being based on recruitment, recruitment's going to be a difficult one, even though the supply is going to be there from candidates looking for jobs. The interesting thing, once things start to get some sense of normality, are companies going to be open to recruiting? Are they going to want to take the risk of putting someone on a payroll when they could just ask everybody to work 2 times harder to retain their jobs and, crack on?
Yeah, so like I think obviously I hope that it will bounce back. Is it likely to bounce back? I think it is also likely, but we have set ourselves up with the mindset that it will not bounce back. So we will be happily surprised if it will bounce back, and we can staff up again, and we can do some further marketing initiatives that we have cut away. But we are prepared for for a sustained period of time of this going on.
Fine. And currently, what's your situation right now? Are you actively closing deals still? Are you just trying to keep the ship going? I know from our point of view, sales is kind of taking a back step and more focused on long-term relationship building on our side as opposed to transactional. Just more, how can we add value to our existing customers and customer success? What's your focus?
Right now, we are very focused on building content. Finding extraordinary contributors who might also be in lockdown themselves, who can use this time to contribute some great assessment material to Cambio, in exchange for like a revenue stream for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the Cambio model. So like that is really one of the things that I spent the most amount of time on really getting extraordinary people to contribute great content for Cambio.
Awesome. Kasper, it's been just over an hour. I know you need to run to your next meeting. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Stay in touch and let me know how this lockdown goes for you over there.
For sure, yeah.
Stay safe. Take care.
Just the last thing, if like I'm sure that if anyone has any questions towards remote hiring or outsourcing, just feel free to just reach out to me directly, and I will happily answer any questions.
Absolutely, I'll drop Kasper's details in the description box, and you can reach out.
Yes.
Otherwise, are you on LinkedIn as well?
Yes.
Perfect. LinkedIn, Kasper Dam, and any questions on outsourcing? Kasper's built a great business there, fully distributed, remote. And even if you're a company which is not fully distributed or remote, but are looking for tips during this lockdown to help you navigate that with the right tools, the right software, then I'm sure Kasper can advise you on how to get started. All right, Kasper, you take care, man.
Great, yes, yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.